Testing our sound. Testing our sound. It's on. It's working. Now it's working.
Yeah, because I just did a different microphone. Gosh, all sorts of technical difficulties today.
Yeah, like all of a sudden. We should have known when things went so well at the park with Oreo that something else was going to get messed up. Okay, so here we are. Sorry for the snafus, but like all of a sudden our USB port failed that our microphone or that our mouse was plugged into, so we couldn't switch over to live, and then we had no sound, and so there we are. So we are here, and we're glad you guys are here. If you hear whining or crying in the background, it's not Robin, it's our dog. He's learning to meet other dogs, and so today we met our daughter and her boyfriend and their dog at the park, and it was a very successful meet and greet. So he's in his crate down there. He can see me, so he'll probably be fine. Yes. But anyway, he couldn't see me a bit ago because I was making myself some food. And yes, and let's see, Karen and Dawn are here, and Jim Hurlbert was here. Larice was here, but she'll probably be back. Oh, Jim's not there now. A couple other friends are here with us. So anyway, so I want to let you know we run the show in 10-minute segments. So at the end of 10 minutes, if anyone has commented or asked a question, I'll read those into the show at that time. And then we'll discuss whatever is brought up. If you have any show ideas, we are open to any show ideas at all. Mm-hmm. We've preempted our other topics to bring in a topic, and so we really want to do what our audience wants to hear. So let us know if you have a show topic idea. If you put in things in the comments, either on YouTube or on Facebook, I can see them all here. And so anyway, we'll get started. And pardon if I eat, but I was needing a little bit of protein, so I made myself a quick little microwave hamburger. So when it cools off enough, I'm going to have some. Okay.
So today's topic is on being thankful, and sometimes that's easier than other times.
Oh, it was fables this week.
Now I looked at the schedule.
I looked at it too. I must looked at the 28th.
The 28th is when we do fables.
Oh, okay.
21st.
So the fact that today is fables was a fable.
Yes, next week will be fables.
The lesson to be learned is to read the schedule accurately.
Actually, we won't be doing it next week, probably, will we?
Unlikely.
Yeah, it's
because of holiday weekend.
So it'll be another week before we do fables after that.
So we're talking about being thankful today.
Yes, so today is being thankful. Since Thanksgiving is coming up next week, it seemed an appropriate topic to choose for today. And you have a passage that people like to use a lot. It says in 1 Thessalonians 5:18, "Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." And of course, that leads to absurdity, like you get run over by a bus, and so, well, thank you, God, for letting me get run over by the bus. Or like the old joke about the Calvinist who got up one morning and was on his way to the kitchen downstairs and tripped on his stairs and tumbled down the stairs, and blam, there he is at the bottom of the stairs. And his comment after he came to was, well, thank God that's over with.
You might want to explain that for people that aren't familiar.
Well, Calvinist. Yeah, I said he was a Calvinist.
I know, but explain what that means, because not everybody might be familiar with it.
Knows what a Calvinist is? Okay.
Right.
Calvinism is a way of thinking about how God's sovereignty works, and argues that essentially everything is fated. An extreme Calvinist assumes that God determines ahead of time who's going to go to heaven, who's going to go to hell, and you're just out of luck regardless. And it's entirely up to God, and you're not a whole lot different than being a puppet to some extent. Calvinism is very popular. You'll see Reformed theology is another way of putting it. And it does have, internally, it's a very logically consistent system. My own personal take on it, though, is that it doesn't quite match the biblical evidence. But of course, a Calvinist would argue strenuously against that. But then, of course, he'd also say I was fated to think this way. So,
Yeah.
regardless.
So do they believe in free will at all?
It varies. To some extent, it's almost viewed as an illusion in the sense that you live your life as if you have free will, but in reality, it's all fated. And you have free will in the sense that you don't know what's going to happen next, and so it feels as if you have free will. But like I said, I'm not comfortable with it from a biblical standpoint. And you have non-Christians that have that idea too, that everything is deterministic, that free will really is completely an illusion.
Right.
We are simply wet robots and do as we have been programmed to do.
Right, by the simulation.
Yes. So, but I'm not comfortable with that point of view. Now, the alternative viewpoint to Calvinism is often said to be Arminianism, and so if people ask me, am I a Calvinist or an Arminian, I say no, and to both of them, because those aren't the only two ways of looking at it. Theology is not binary in that sense. There are other alternatives, and we can do that for a different topic, perhaps, at some point.
I think that would be a good idea. Let's get on with this topic.
But yeah, being thankful. And so when it says give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus, the idea is not that you are thankful for being run over by a bus, or thankful for getting cancer, or thankful for having COVID, or whatever. That's not, Paul is not being an idiot. But what he is asking, and this is the thing that is important, I think, and helps in circumstances, is to learn how to keep things in perspective.
Oops, I forgot to set the timer.
Oh. That is, as one of the stories I like to point out from the Bible is in Genesis chapter 42, and I bring this up rather frequently. It's the story of Jacob. And in Genesis chapter 42, Jacob is an old man. He's had you could say an interesting life. He got in trouble with his older brother for various things that he had done. He had also tricked his father, and so his dad's not particularly happy with him probably either, but he's particularly worried about his older brother who is planning on murdering him. And so he goes off to the family region to live with his uncle Laban. And when he gets there, he falls in love with Laban's younger daughter. Then Laban, of course, screws him over and gets him drunk, and that night he ends up having married the older sister, Leah, who is described as having weak eyes. My suspicion is that that's a euphemism, meaning she was hard on the eyes. But he was drunk and it was dark. This is pre-industrial time. You don't have lights. And so he couldn't really see what was going on in the tent. And so then, he had worked 7 years to get the younger daughter, and now he's going to have to work another 7 years to get the one that he actually loves, although his uncle Laban is nice and allows him to have her after a week.
After a week, I thought it was 7 years he had to wait for.
No, he didn't have to wait an additional 7 years. He had to wait until an appropriate amount of time had passed for Leah to enjoy him.
Oh.
And then after a week, he was able to marry Rachel, but then he had to work for an additional 7 years for her.
Oh, okay.
But no, he didn't have to wait another 7 years to get her.
Okay.
So, anyway, Rachel had trouble having children. Leah did not. Eventually, Rachel has Joseph, the firstborn of Rachel, the woman he actually loves, And then she dies, giving birth to the next son, Benjamin. So Joseph ends up, when all is said and done, with 4 wives, 12 kids, not counting daughters. And the other 10 do not get along well with Joseph, and they plot, and finally, well, initially they're plotting to kill him. Then they decide, well, why should we kill him when we can make money off him? So they sell him into slavery in Egypt. And then they tell their dad they'd been eaten by a wild animal. So Jacob is under the impression that Joseph is dead. Then there's a famine in the land, and he sends the other 10 children down to Egypt to get grain, because Egypt still has food. And they are treated poorly by the governor of Egypt, and who takes one of the 10 kids and puts them in the dungeon and sends the rest back, demanding that they bring Benjamin, the youngest child, with them the next time they come, if they want to see Simeon released from the dungeon. And so Jacob bewails his fate at this point. That is, he says, look, Joseph is dead, Rachel is dead. You want to take, Simeon is gone. You want to take Benjamin from me. And he says, everything is against me. And the reality of his circumstance, though, is radically different than what he imagines. That is, as far as anybody can tell, Jacob is absolutely right in saying everything is against him. His life has sucked. And everybody he cares about is dead or locked away or in being threatened. But the reality is that nasty governor in Egypt is actually his son Joseph, who's not dead at all. And so Jacob's reality is actually quite good. But there's no way he can know that. There's no way the people around him can know that. That is, Joseph is the governor in Egypt. He's wealthy. He's well off. The family is set. He's powerful. Things really could not be better, but Jacob can't see that. Mm-hmm. And for us as Christians, and this is what Paul's point is, that, we are children of God. We're going to be with God forever in eternity. Things objectively could not possibly be better for us. Paul elsewhere talks about, our few and momentary troubles here on earth. And of course, Paul's life was no bed of roses. He never married. He has a rather peripatetic existence, traveling around preaching hither and yon. He gets tossed in prison rather frequently. He gets shipwrecked. I mean, if you look at his list of woes, they're extended. He gets stoned once, and ultimately he'll be executed by having his head chopped off by the Roman government. But yeah, he describes those as brief and momentary problems because, in the broader context of his life, his existence, things are really quite good. He's a child of God. He's going to be with God forever. Mm-hmm. Eternity is an awfully long time. What we experience here on earth is very, very brief. However horrible it may be, it's still exceptionally brief compared to eternity and what our life actually is.
Dog has his face pressed up.
And so when he says give thanks in all circumstances, the point there is to try to remind yourself in the storms of life, in the confusion, in the horrors that we have to go through, that there are reasons to be thankful. We're not thankful for the bad things or the bad times. We don't enjoy the bad times. But we know there's more to it than that. And that's hard to do. And, keep in mind, Jesus, as he's facing the cross, asks his Father to take that from him. He'd rather not have to go through that, even though it's a very minor incident. And, Jesus is God. Mm-hmm. And yet he still is resistant to that suffering for that fraction of a moment in his existence.
An interesting thing that, just spoiler alert, I'm going to talk about the current season of The Crown because that's what I'm watching right now. But one of the episodes is about the guy that made his way into the Queen's bedroom, and
Oh, yeah.
they
They fictionalized it a bit.
yeah, they did. But something that she says in there, he's like, what's Thatcher going to do about inflation and unemployment, because things were pretty bad in England at that time, and that they shouldn't be spending all this money on the Falklands War. And the Queen said, when you've been in power as long as I have, you know that things change, that economies go up and down, wars happen, wars stop, things like that. She said, so this issue that we're having right now with the economy and that it's not permanent. And she was trying to reassure him that, this isn't a permanent situation, that things will change. They always do. And that's the thing, when you're in the middle of it, you don't remember that. Mm-hmm. But I was reading something today about, someone was talking about all the election stuff going on with, all the lawsuits and the recounting all the votes, and why are they doing this? Why doesn't Donald Trump just accept his fate? And he's a sore loser. And I'm like, yeah, this happened before in Florida. Florida has now learned their lesson, and they probably have the best voting system of anybody in the nation. But it wasn't too long ago that Al Gore was suing the state of Florida to have all their stuff recounted. And if you remember, all the hanging chads and the dimples and the, trying to figure out what the intention of the voter was. Were they starting to pick this one and then change their mind? Why is this barely pushed through? And that whole thing, and it was a big hullabaloo.
Yes.
And then I was also reading an article about the 1918 pandemic, and that there was mandated masks, and San Francisco actually had one of the biggest anti-mask movements, shockingly, because they are now everybody mask up and don't go anywhere. But anyway, so it's interesting to read that stuff and be like, yeah, things aren't so different. And they did recommend that people not get together for Thanksgiving and things like that, and in the 1918 pandemic. So it's just interesting to read those things and realize that the more things change, the more they stay the same. Mm-hmm. But conversely, that this too shall pass.
Right.
It may feel like a kidney stone, but it'll pass.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, perspective. It's hard to get perspective. It's hard to keep perspective, particularly when you're going through something unpleasant. Mm-hmm. It's hard to have perspective during those moments because all you can see during those moments is the pain that you're in. Mm-hmm. And that's all you care about, is that this pain would go away. And you don't care that it's going to go away. You want it to go away now, this instant. Not that it's going to eventually not be a problem for you. It's interesting that we never have those same emotions when things are going well. That is, when you are enjoying yourself, you don't say, I wish this would end now.
Yeah. Or this too shall pass.
No, please.
Although when you're on vacation, you're enjoying it and stuff, but you keep thinking, the end of the week is coming, or the end of the weekend
wanting
is
it
coming.
Not because
right,
you're wanting
you don't
it
want
not
it.
to.
You don't want it to end. Yeah.
Right. So perspective is a funny thing.
Yes. Well, it's the bathroom door thing.
Yeah.
How long is a minute? Well, it depends on which side of the bathroom door you're on. Mm-hmm. If you're on the inside, just a minute. On the outside, it's like, no, this is eternity.
Yeah. Negative things stick in our head much more firmly than positives. And negative things cause us much more angst than a positive thing does. I've talked before that, we want to be regularly told by the people that matter to us that I love you. Mm-hmm. But we only have to stick our fingers in a light socket once to know not to do that again. We don't have to keep reminding ourselves that it's a bad idea.
Right.
But positive things, we need constant reminders. And going back to that passage in 1 Thessalonians, the preceding 2 verses, which are very short, and they're part of the sentence that verse 18 is the ending for. It says, "Rejoice always, pray continually, and then give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." Rejoice always and pray continuously. Praying is perhaps part of the way that you can try to maintain some semblance of stability in the storm. Rejoice always is just as hard as give thanks in all circumstances, and they kind of tie together. Because giving thanks is, you're doing it because it's something positive. That is, you give thanks when you make your last mortgage payment, or when you finish paying off a car, or finish paying off
or 2 cars.
or 2 cars like we did yesterday. That is, you can be thankful, but you're not rejoicing or being thankful when it's in the middle somewhere.
Yeah.
That is, you're happy when you first get the thing and you've got the payments. But then, after a while, that happiness goes away, and you just see the regular monthly expense, which probably tells us something about human nature as well.
Yes.
That is, you should be able to be thankful the whole way through, but you're only thankful at the beginning and at the end.
Yep.
Because we lack perspective. History is a useful thing for helping us maintain perspective. That is, looking at what, like Ruth talked about the 1918 pandemic, that helps you keep the current pandemic in perspective. Looking at past elections and how they were resolved and the arguments pertaining to them helps you get through current elections and everything that happens. That is, what's going on currently is nothing all that out of the ordinary, and it's following the normal legal precedents. There's nothing weird about it. Depending on which side you are, you may be more emotionally invested in it than you otherwise would be. But because if you read something in history, well, this is all done. You don't care anymore what happened in 2000 election.
Right.
You don't care what happened, going back even further, except that looking at how those things resolve themselves gives you perspective and hope for the way things are now.
Right.
It is, it's not weird, it's not destabilizing, it's not
unprecedented.
unprecedented.
I'm so sick of that word.
Generally speaking, very few things are unprecedented.
Well, just look at Solomon. He said there's nothing new under the sun.
Human nature is always the same. What does change is technology. But so far as basic human responses to things, it's the same as it's always been. And people have a remarkably low faith in the stability of our system of government. That is, you would think after almost 250 years now of functioning this way, that people would think, gee, this probably works. Particularly after we've gone through some really horrific times.
Yeah.
That is, if you think we're divided now, go back and read about the way things were from about 1850 to 1865. That is, leading up to the Civil War, and then during the Civil War from 1861 to 1865. We survived that, we can survive anything. You have no idea how bad.
Well, and a lot of the angst and distrust and things like that, that the fervor behind it is really amped up by the media.
Well, it's amped up by media and social media.
Well, that's what I mean.
News media and social media. But there's financial incentive for them to do it that way, too. As you get people watching your news show, if you scare people. Here are 10 things that are going to kill you. Come back after the commercial and we'll tell you what they are.
Commercials being first on the list.
Because that's really why they've got you there, so you'll watch the commercials, because that way they can that's how they stay in business,
Right.
is by selling those commercials. And it's based on how many eyeballs are looking at them. If you can say you've got, 10 million viewers, you can charge more for your advertising. That's why the most expensive advertising of all is for the Super Bowl, because that's where you have a guaranteed really big audience. And so they can charge enormous amounts of money for those ads. 30-second spot costing millions of dollars.
Yeah, so Larice said that she doesn't want to be here any longer than she has to be here, but we don't want to go any sooner, because we had a lady in our church who, very elderly, she's now since passed away, but very elderly, and she would go for walks. And one time she had a walker, and she would go for walks with her walker, and she told me that she had fallen, and it had taken a while before somebody found her and helped her up, and she wasn't able to get up on her own. And I told her, I said, Miss Eula, I said, you need to make sure somebody knows that you're going for a walk, because she didn't have like one of those I've fallen and can't get up button things. I told her it might be a good idea and talk to her children about getting it for her. She's like, oh no, I'm fine. I go, look, if you fall down out there and you die and you show up in heaven before God's expecting you, your mansion's not going to be ready. He's going to have to put you up in the Motel 6. And even though it's heaven, Motel 6 probably still is not that nice.
Still a Motel 6.
It's still a Motel 6, yeah. So she just thought that was so funny, and we would joke about that, and I would tell her, I'd say, oh, I see you're not going to the Motel 6 this week. So when she did pass away, it was her time. Her mansion was ready.
Yes.
And she's now there enjoying it, waiting for her husband to show up,
Yes.
who is currently in a nursing home, and we need to schedule a Zoom call to talk to him.
Yes.
But he's actually already had COVID, and he survived.
Yes.
So
80-something-year-old
almost 90.
African-American.
Yep.
I mean, all sorts of reasons. I mean, people in his condition are less likely to survive than anybody. And, he
And
did
especially
fine.
being in a nursing home and being as old as he is. I don't know if he has any underlying health conditions. He's thin, so it's
That
being
probably
heavy
helps.
is not one of them. But they tested him. He tested positive. They moved him to the area of the nursing home where they keep their COVID positive patients. And he had a couple negative tests, and then they put him back. So in his regular room after a few weeks. So anyway, so I figure if he can survive it, certainly I could if I get it. So
Yeah.
who knows? And the thing is you're not going to die from this unless it's your time.
Yes.
So don't be stupid. Don't go around licking doorknobs going, ha, I won't die because God doesn't want me dead yet. Unless God goes, ha, guess what? It's your time, and this is how you're going out.
Because you're stupid.
Yeah, because it's time
You're
to...
too stupid to live.
That's right. It's time to reduce the amount of stupid on the planet. We're starting with you. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, do not stop looking both ways before you cross the street.
you're right.
Do not be a moron.
Yeah.
Because if you're a moron, you will die
Yes.
eventually, sooner than you otherwise might.
Well, it seems that morons don't die as quickly as we would like for them to.
There's the old
though.
saying that is attributed to Bismarck, who was the king, or who was the, not king, who helped unify Germany. And he said that God looks out for fools, drunks, and the United States of America. His primary thing was talking about the United States because he didn't think much of our foreign policy or our ability to take care of ourselves, and was remarking at the fact that somehow we managed to survive anyway.
Yeah.
So. That's the other thing, again, thinking in terms of perspective regarding the United States, the Europeans have never much cared for us. The other countries in the world have never much cared for us. And so if the rest of the world doesn't like us, that's kind of the way it's always been.
Yep.
So it's normal.
They're just jealous.
Yeah, well, actually, that is part of it. Part of it is that when you are the richest, most powerful country, that tends to engender a certain amount of dislike. And the other thing that is counterintuitive, and you'll find this in personal experiences, is if you have to give somebody something, they don't necessarily always like it. Mm-hmm. That is, they resent having to depend on you. Mm-hmm. So there's that aspect of it as well. So, rejoice always, pray continually, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. Now, thinking in terms of freedom versus determinism, it's an odd way of wording things if you believe in determinism, because it says it's asking you to do these things, to rejoice always, to pray continually, to give thanks in all circumstances. That's God's will that you would do those things. Doesn't God always get his way? Apparently not. Mm-hmm. So, again, when you actually look at the way things are worded scripturally, we do have, I think, some amount of free will. But that's off topic, so we should not go there. So, being thankful. The other aspect of being thankful is the attitude associated with it. That is, making the attempt to be thankful can help a lot. That is, the attitude you bring with you going into circumstances has a lot to do with how you're going to react to the circumstances. People that are more upbeat and more positive are more likely to respond to medical treatment. That is, if you are very down, depressed, discouraged, your odds of surviving a serious illness are not so good. Yep. Versus if you're more positive and upbeat, which is an odd thing that you wouldn't think your attitude should have that much impact on your body, but the connection between your mind and your body is rather strong, given the fact that your mind is inside your body. And it's your brain that's making it happen. Your brain is an organ in your body. Is it works quite clearly in the other direction. That is, if you're hungry, if you haven't had enough sleep, you'll tend to be grumpy. Mm-hmm. That is, how your body feels has an impact on how your mind reacts. If you imbibe too much, your mind is not as clear as it otherwise might be, and so on. Yeah. So the fact that, and so making yourself, we've talked before about cognitive dissonance and changing people's minds, and how do you go about doing that. And we've talked about the biased mindset. That is, for instance, prejudice comes from our tendency to find things that confirm what we already believe. That is, if you have decided that all lawyers are bad, then you notice every time a lawyer misbehaves. You don't notice other people doing the same bad things who aren't lawyers, nor do you notice lawyers that do good things. You only notice what confirms what you already believe. And so being thankful means that you're going to start trying to focus on things that may be positive. You start trying to find things to be positive about, find things to be thankful for. And that can transform how you look at life.
Another thing to think about when you're thinking in terms of being thankful, like when you're in a hard time, I like to use this picture with, I use it with my students, going through this really hard time with distance learning, and it's really a struggle. And I've told the parents we're going to be really impressed with what we see in our kids on the other side of it, because they're going to learn some self-determination and to really do things for themselves. And the picture I like to use for it is the Biosphere was a project that was started in the 1980s or 70s?
1990s.
90s. And it was designed as an experimental thing for possibly a way to do colonizing Mars, where you would have all of the biomes that are on Earth in this biosphere, and that people could live in there and survive. Well, it ended up failing. They still have it going.
They learned a lot.
Yeah, they learned a lot from it. Arizona State University in Tucson has taken it over. It was a private company that had it. But anyway, the university now has it, and they're still using it, and they're still doing experiments. But one of the interesting things that happened was the plants grew really, really well because it was a really controlled environment, and things grew. They had a rainforest area and all that kind of stuff. And the plants grew really well, but at some point the trees fell over, and they couldn't figure out why the trees fell over. Well, the trees had never had any wind on them, and so they were really weak. So when they got to a certain height, they fell over. So when you go through, like the Bible verse says, consider it all joy when you go through hard times, because it's strengthening you and making you more resilient, making you able to stand tall when you get older. Like as you grow, you mature in your walk, that you'll be able to withstand things. And then someone who's coming along behind you that is now going through something you went through, you can be an encouragement to them. And it's all really relational, and it's really, really important to remember. We came to the end of the 10-minute segment, and we have some more discussion. Your elderly parent has to depend on you. That can be beyond frustrating. Yes, I take care of my mom where her cancer stuff is concerned, and sometimes I get really frustrated with her because she doesn't always still realize that she's not remembering stuff from chemo. She's gotten a lot better cognitively. Like right after chemo, it was bad. But like I went to the doctor with her, and I can't go in with her because of the COVID thing. They're only allowing one person at a time. And so they were supposed to call me after she had her exam so that I could talk to the doctor. And they never called me. And I said, well, did you ask him about this particular test? And she goes, no. And I'm like, she goes, I forgot. And I go, I came all the way down here, and I don't even get to get on the phone to ask the doctor the questions that I have. And I was really angry, and just kind of at the situation more than at her, because I understand she can't remember. So it does get frustrating, and there have been a couple times we've had little arguments, but she realizes that I'm just there trying to help her, and we eventually smooth it over. And then she said, actually, I do believe that God does get us to do what he wants us to do.
Well, he does, but it's the same way we get the people in our lives to do stuff. That is, we don't turn them into puppets, but we do learn how to persuade. And God is very good at persuading us because he knows everything. And so he knows exactly what buttons need to be pushed in order to get us to do what we need to do. And so a good example of this is the story of Jonah and the whale. Jonah did not want to go to Nineveh. He wanted Nineveh to be destroyed. And so he thought to himself, God has asked me to go and preach to them. If I do that, they'll repent, God will forgive them, and they won't get destroyed. This is not what I want. So, how am I going to thwart God? Well, I know what I'll do. I will disobey him. I will run the other way. God will get mad at me and kill me. But nobody will then go talk to Nineveh, and they will have to be destroyed, and so I get my way. I win. And so he runs away. And the storm comes up, and Jonah confidently has them toss him into the ocean because, he'll drown. He'll die. Jonah wins. What happens? Jonah gets swallowed by a whale. He spends 3 days in the whale. Whale spits him up on the shore. God comes to Jonah again. Jonah, I'd like you...
He's angry and he smells bad.
He says, Jonah, I'd like you to go to Nineveh. And Jonah thinks to himself...
Oh, she said I read it wrong. Okay, but anyway, go ahead and finish your story.
Jonah thought to himself, well, that didn't work out so well. I guess I'll go ahead and go to Nineveh. That is, Jonah made the choice. That is, Jonah could have, at that point, said no and tried running away again, but he thought to himself, 3 days in a whale was unpleasant. And maybe, there are worse things that could happen to me than dying. So I'll just go ahead and do what God wants. God was able to manipulate Jonah to get Jonah to do what God wanted him to do. Jonah was making a free choice to do so under duress, but he was still doing what God wanted him to do freely. So that's the way God made it. And the other way is thinking in terms of, for instance, a good analogy is with a free market economy. That is, it's counterintuitive. You would think that a command economy would be a more rational way of handling things. Is you have somebody at the top deciding on the distribution of products to everybody. The problem, of course, is that any command economy that's ever existed, Soviet Union being a good example, is you end up with empty store shelves and thousands of pairs of boots that only are right, for the right foot and not the left foot. That is, it does not work. What does work is a situation where nobody is in charge, everybody does what they want, and you can go to the store and get whatever it is you're interested in getting. You can find your favorite ice cream, you can find your favorite, you can find clothing that fits you, whatever. And yet there's no one person running it all. That is, people acting freely, doing whatever they want, produce an ordered situation.
The only place that doesn't work is at the Walmart on Valley Central Way.
Yeah.
It's the only place in the world where that.
Yeah, there's something wrong with the way that place operates.
Because it's always got empty shelves. Okay, so I'm going to read her comment exactly the way she wrote it, because I didn't understand it at first, and so I edited it myself, and I shouldn't have. She said, actually, I do believe that God does get to do what he wants to do.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, God does get to do what he wants to do.
Then she said looting. Not sure where the looting comment comes from.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
But, okay, so then we also had this comment, too, from Dawn and Karen. They both had COVID. It hit their school, and apparently they were still having face-to-face school. And she had mild symptoms. She did lose 10 pounds in 3 days, which I heard is one benefit of COVID. You do lose weight, but it's a really nasty way to lose weight.
Yeah, it probably is temporary.
Yeah, that too, because you probably just lose more liquid than anything. But the second week did have major fatigue. Dawn had no symptoms at all, which she was thankful for while having COVID herself. But during that time, Dawn's dad had fallen, had a hip replacement.
That's right.
Dawn's mom didn't know where Dawn's dad was for like 6 hours, and because they live in Mexico, but then they will often go to San Diego for their health care. So they had taken him to San Diego from Mexico, from where they live in Mexico. And then, but the neighbors helped them out and everything. She said she agrees with you that you have to put your mind in the right mindset of looking toward what you can be thankful for. We make a lot of choices in our mind as to what our focus will be. So, she said looting, going into the Walmart and taking what you want, the looting that is going on. Oh, I'm not even talking about the looting. I'm just talking about the Walmart on Valley Central Way on a normal day.
Yeah, the Walmart is very poorly managed.
Yeah.
The local one here in Lancaster on Valley Central Way is the worst Walmart I have ever seen in my life.
Yep.
I've talked to the managers of, a couple different times, 2 different managers actually, they go through them. And nothing improves. That is, they can't.
Onions. For like over a month, we could not buy onions.
They had none.
None.
They had no potatoes for a while. When they first opened, I wanted to get a bucket. They had no buckets. They had a space on the shelf for buckets, but there are no buckets there. You'll go in to get, ordinary sorts of things, lettuce, whatever, and it's simply not there. And you talk to one of the, I talked to the person that was in the produce aisle, when the produce area, who's supposed to be in charge of the produce area, when they had no potatoes, and he got mad at me and was mean to me.
Because you wanted potatoes?
Because I wanted potatoes, as if I was asking for something unreasonable. And then, they'll not have, say, lemons. I'll go there and they don't have lemons. And I'd ask about it, and they'd say, oh, well, there's a shortage of lemons or whatever. And so I go to Food for Less. They're
Millions
run
of
with
lemons.
millions of lemons. So they lie. But yeah, they can't keep things in stock. And then they've instituted various loss prevention things, and what they do is they put things behind glass and it's locked. So you gotta find an employee to come and unlock it and get the thing for you. And they keep adding more and more things. So if you want deodorant, well, it's behind glass. You want shampoo, it's behind glass. You want underwear, you want socks, it's all behind glass.
Well, you needed a belt at the beginning of COVID, and normally you would go to the dressing rooms and say, I need to get a belt out of the locked case, because I guess stealing belts is a big thing.
Yeah, which is stupid.
But nobody was working in the try-on area because it was COVID. You're not allowed to use the dressing rooms, so there was nobody there. So I'm walking around the store going, does anybody work in the store? And I was even, the security camera was up there. I'm like, excuse me, I need a belt. Will you come if I break the glass? And it was like a whole big thing. Finally, an employee wandered by.
Yeah, but it's not loss prevention, it's sales prevention.
Yeah, exactly.
They've essentially made it impossible to buy. They're not having things stolen, but they're also not selling anything because you can't get to it. So it's just a series of very poor choices. I could go on and on about this place. It is horrible. It's gotten so bad that I don't shop at Walmart anymore.
Yeah, calling corporate doesn't work either because you've already done it.
Yeah, I've called corporate. I've posted on their Facebook page.
You did a newspaper article?
I've done more than one. I did a newspaper article for the Jerusalem Post, so this is international, for a smaller local paper. I warned them I was going to do this. Nothing. They could not care less.
Because they're making a ton of money, they don't care if you're unhappy.
Yeah, so anyway, the bottom line is that their loss prevention methods, as well as not having things in stock, has caused them sales prevention because I will not shop there anymore. It's just not worth it. The place makes me unhappy. I cannot be thankful in that.
Now, I'm thankful for the Palmdale Walmart. The problem is I have to drive almost 10 miles to get there. But I go there on Saturdays because normally I go to Palmdale to do my grocery shopping in the Saturday mornings. And so I'll go to the Palmdale Walmart, and they almost always have everything. And some stuff is under lock and key, but not like the Lancaster one.
Yeah, that store is it's worthless. I'm not going to go there anymore, period. And the reason we went there for so long and we keep going back despite all the problems is because that's the closest thing to us.
Yeah, they closed the little Vons by our house once the Super Walmart opened.
Yeah.
And they had told us, they said, this store is likely to close if they turn that other Walmart into a Super Walmart. And when they did, they closed it.
They closed it, but that means that our options are now, we've got to drive further to...
Right, if you just need something quick for recipe, you don't want to drive extra.
But I'm not going to do it anymore. It's just not worth it. I'll go someplace else. I'll drive the extra distance.
Karen said, I'm so thankful my Walmart is better than your Walmart, LOL.
Every Walmart on the planet is better than that one.
Lorraine said she'll call. She has no trouble getting things done.
I have called. I've called them repeatedly. I've gone there in person. I could make a huge list of things. And when I would post the negative things on their Facebook page, do they respond to them? No, they just deleted them. No.
But you do, Larice. If you want to call,
go ahead and
advocate for us. Valley Central Way, Lancaster, California. That's the store.
Yeah, that's the specific store. There's 4 Walmarts in our area here, but that specific one is on Valley Central Way. Horrible place.
Yep.
Cannot say enough bad things about it. And I have no qualm because I've tried everything else. So, yeah, forget it.
And we don't have any issues with individual people there.
Employees
try really hard.
Some of them.
Yeah, some of them.
Not all of them.
Well, the one guy felt really bad about our pickup order.
Yeah.
He did. He felt really bad about it.
Yeah, but again, it's just so poorly run.
Yeah. It's
I
not
don't
really
know
their
what
fault.
I'm not sure why they can't run the store better than they do. It's very strange, but yeah.
So not thankful for the Valley Central Walmart, but we are thankful for the Palmdale Walmart and the fact that we have Albertsons and Vons. But we don't have a lot of grocery stores up here. Ralph's went out of business. We used to have Hughes.
Yeah,
I don't like going to Winco.
I know.
That was a good store for my Girl
have,
Scouts to shop
at. It does tend to have things in stock, though.
Yeah. But it was
And we've
great
got-
for Girl Scout shopping. I would split up the shopping list, put the girls in shopping teams, and they had a budget. And if they came in under budget, we would get ice cream on the way back from our trip. Man, those girls could shop. They were good. And then the co-leader and I would stand up by the check stands. We had our phones, so if they had a question, they could ask us. But they were like calculating their bill and like, well, we don't need a lot of ketchup. We'll just get this small thing of ketchup, even though the unit price is more. And those girls learned how to shop. It was fun.
Yeah.
And then I didn't have to do it anymore.
So anyway, I just go to Target and order things on Amazon. I'm much happier. Less
People
stress.
die at our Winco. Just that one guy.
Just the one
Some
idiot.
guy was trying to get away from security, and he got up onto the roof and he fell down in one of those post things, and they didn't realize he fell down there until he started to smell bad. And it was like right by the front doors. So people were walking in the front doors going, what is that smell? Well, some guy decaying in the post out in front of the store. They finally got his body. Only in Lancaster.
Yes.
You have to live in Lancaster to get these awesome stories. Feel bad for the guy's family, but you know.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Darwin Award.
Yes. Oh, dear. Anything else?
She was just saying, she's not always about people. When I complain, I have called to tell them how good they are as an associate. And I do fill out the things like, they did a really good job and things like that.
And again, see, this is the other thing, too, is human beings will tend to complain, but we won't tend to thank.
Yeah.
And it is a very useful thing to get in the habit of doing when somebody does a good job, to reinforce that by thanking them for it, praising them for it, which is the other. And see, that's the aspect of thankfulness. It's not just your own feeling of thankfulness. It's making sure other people are aware that you are thankful, that you appreciate what they do.
Right.
And thankfulness is something that you give to somebody else.
I try to, if I do complain at a place, then the next place I go to, I try to do some kind of something that will, either thank someone in person or do like a review, excuse me, of that other, not in revenge, but just kind of balance things out, just to keep myself more positive.
Yeah.
Because you can really walk around just complaining about everything.
Yeah, you can. As if you seek out bad things or just only notice, again, thankfulness, try to be thankful. Have an attitude of thankfulness, trying to find...
Attitude of gratitude.
Yes, try to find things to be thankful for. Focus on positive sorts of things as opposed to the negative.
Wasn't that Reverend Schuller used to say attitude of gratitude thing? Or no, he was the Be Happy Attitudes.
Yeah.
That was the
it
Beatitudes. Might have been TC that was attitude of gratitude. Man, that man right there, I'll tell you, TC Kelly. He went to our church years ago. He moved to live near family in St. Louis, and older man. Nobody ever knew how old he was.
Yeah, we're not quite sure.
But when we met him, he was old.
Yeah.
So he was one of those eternally old people. And his wife had passed away 30-odd years ago when we first came to this church. And so we didn't really know her because she was ill and she hadn't been to church in a while. And she passed away.
After we got there.
But you would never know the man was a widower, man. Always happy. And he'd say, I'm too blessed to be stressed, have an attitude of gratitude. Just a very, very positive man.
Spent his time helping the homeless.
Yeah, he was always helping somebody. He always had time for people, and he moved to St. Louis. We missed him so much, and then he ended up falling and breaking his hip or his femur or something, and he just kind of never recovered from it and passed away. But yeah, he was a pretty amazing person and just a really good example of just being positive.
Yep, always finding reasons to be thankful. So he lived out this verse in Thessalonians. He rejoiced always, he prayed continually, and he gave thanks in all circumstances.
Yep. So we're at 5:02.
Yes.
So next Saturday we will not be here.
Yes, it's the holiday weekend, Thanksgiving weekend, and so we'll be busy.
Yes.
With other things.
The following Saturday we'll be back with Fables.
Yes.
right? Okay.
Fables is the 28th.
Okay.
Saturday the 28th.
And no,
Or not the 28th.
No,
It'll be
it'll be December
something or other.
6th or something like that.
Yeah.
Let me look really fast.
28th is what I have on the Facebook page
Yes.
because I wasn't
No,
paying
December
attention.
5th.
December 5th will be Fables. I will
Yes.
make the correction on the Facebook page.
Yes. So,
And if you have any idea for things that you'd like us to talk about, please let us know.
yep. And please come back and invite a friend. We'd like to up our listeners. So,
Yeah.
invite
And
a friend to
share.
listen. Yeah, share it with people. And we really want to get good discussions going. We like
Yeah.
it when people interact
And
with
this
us.
streams both on Facebook Live as well as on our YouTube channel.
Yep.
So we've got a YouTube channel and Facebook Live. We do both.
Yep. Find A Mirror Darkly, Unbridled Inquiry, and subscribe. Hit the little notification bell if you're on YouTube. You can follow our page. If you're looking for a place to worship, we do have service live streamed on Facebook at 11 a.m. on Sundays, Pacific time.
Yeah, Quartz Hill
on
Community
Sundays.
Church.
And go to the Quartz Hill Community Church Facebook page. You can join that, so you'll be notified. Also, our YouTube page. I think we've kind of worked out most of the kinks. We are going to get a new CPU. We're maxing out this 10-year-old computer here.
Right.
So,
And we're hoping that once we do get the new computer that the video quality will improve. Right
Yeah.
now we're probably streaming at best standard definition TV. The software we have is capable of doing 4K. Obviously we're not doing 4K, but that's because this poor machine would choke.
So we have a follower from Canada. That's what
Oh.
I like to call our neighbors to the north. And so they're expecting their first major snowfall tomorrow. She said, "Happy Thanksgiving."
Oh.
So we do have a listener from Sweden, and so we're an international
International
show.
show now. Yeah.
And you guys can always catch us after because the feed does upload, and then you can catch it
Yeah,
after.
it's
if
always
you're
saved
not
with
home.
both
Yeah.
the Facebook page and the YouTube channel. Past episodes are all there.
Yep.
So
Anyway, so we'll see you in 2 weeks. Everybody
Yes.
have a happy Thanksgiving and take care.
yeah.
Be safe. Wash your hands. He finally stopped crying and went to sleep. I knew he would.